Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List Unplugged. This is my fourth series, which is emphasizing comfort films. I am extremely stoked to have my guest today, the great and powerful Sakana, the one
I'm
and
very
only.
stoked to be here. Also, not great and powerful, but I'm happy to be talking to you about this stuff.
Hello, Sakana is here for my podcast's 1 year anniversary, which is today, September
Yay.
1st, is when I debuts, which was my first episode ever with another incomparable person, Frank Ritz. And I feel very privileged because when I was thinking this morning about a year ago, I never would have thought that Sakana would be on my pod ever. And I knew who you were then too. So it just feels very serendipitous that you are the person that is marking, and my second female guest. Like the
Yes.
only, it's you and Jetta now, and that's it.
Well,
So
that's
that's
very
also special.
flattering. It makes me sound far more interesting and compelling than I am, but I am very happy that I am here for this, and I am extremely delighted to add one other tally to the
To the
non-male side of the board. Yeah, I'm excited to be that
It's a
person
lot of
also.
male energy, I have to say. And I found, I don't know if you have found this, but what would you say your percentage of followers are? Like in terms of how many what's the ratio? Like
It's
guys to
definitely very heavily male or male
Mhm.
identifying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would say probably, I don't know, 80-20 or 90-10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, maybe 80-20 for me. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so I mean
Yeah.
it's not your fault that your podcast like reflects basically exactly reflects that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and nothing against it. I think it's fantastic, but it's just like when you find someone that you feel kindred with, who is, you're just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hi." It's almost like you're in a foreign country and someone starts speaking English and you just cling to them like a lifeboat.
I
So,
don't know if you found, well, I guess your name is your name on
mhm.
Letterboxd, so you probably don't have this, but like I have definitely had people just assume that I'm
Oh,
a guy or male
yeah.
identifying just because like everybody they follow is, and so probably this person must be too, which is I don't mind at all, but it speaks to what you're describing, sort of the really heavy masculine bent of our list.
And Sakana it could
Gender
be,
neutral.
right? Is it
Yeah.
kind of? I feel like it, and it also, I think when I first read it, I thought that you were like Japanese or
Yeah.
that you
It
were
is.
not. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
got
I
that.
told you it means fish in Japanese, so it's
Hmm.
understandable that you would think that. In fact, I'm just like this old like white lady, but my name sounds very interesting, I guess.
It also reminded me of the word katana. Sakana, Sakana, Sakana katana
Which is
is
cool.
yeah, that sounds really cool. It is a cool sounding handle, I have to say. Of all the ones that I see, because there's some random ones, that seem like it was the person's, like, email address in high school sort of
Yes,
vibe. So s
for
and,
sure.
can people, like, shorten it? I guess SAK, right? SAKA, but
Yeah,
there's not really another way, is there? Is there anybody
I
who
don't
calls you
know.
anything else?
I mean, it's not, it's a word that means fish, so you can use it any way you want. I think
Mm,
you and Ethan are the only people who call me Sack, but I sort of like that.
I like it, SAK. It's it's brevity, we're trying to get to the point.
Yeah, you don't have time for that the
I don't
other
have
two
that
syllables. Sakana.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What's that line from Big Lebowski? I can't remember it right now.
What?
Uh, what? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out, and this is such a famous line from Big Lebowski.
I can't even think of what it would be. I feel like
It's
I'll
about
recognize it.
brevity, and he's like, "If
Oh
you're," oh
yeah,
yeah, it's this when he says
that
like
whole brevity thing, man.
the whole brevity. Yeah, yeah, if you're into the whole brevity thing, there we go.
Yes,
Gosh, I just probably had people screaming at me.
it's
Okay.
got to be only a matter of time before somebody has that as a comfort film for sure.
Oh, good point. That's
Yeah,
a great comfort movie.
it definitely is.
Yeah, anything that is just, like, intensely quotable. I will
Hmm.
say, though, for you, that you are the first person that I've talked to about comfort films where your comfort films are also hidden gems, all 3 of them.
Mm,
Yours are definitely in the category of, like, underrated classics as well as being comfortable to you, which I think sort of speaks to you as a person, like, your aesthetic, because a lot of people's
maybe.
are just, like, popular movies, like, that everyone loves and has heard of already.
Yeah,
And yours, I had only heard of the middle one. I hadn't heard of the other 2.
yeah. And something, I mean, it also, I think, depends on when you encounter the stuff and sort of the context in which you encounter the stuff.
Mm,
Because I think all of mine, the episodes I've listened to, people always have at least like one or two that are sort of childhood things for them, things that they've been watching forever. And like I
right,
have movies that are really important to me that I became familiar with in my childhood, but
right.
that I enjoy revisiting, but they are not right now at least what I turn to for comfort. And something I realized when I was looking at them, when I was going back and looking at when I first saw them, the first two, which are the ones that I've seen the most that are sort of like closest to my heart. They're
Mhm.
both pandemic movies. They're both from 2020 when I first saw them, and I am sure that and the other, as I told you, like a couple other ones I was considering were also things that I sort of first encountered for the first time, like while we were in lockdown.
Which is very interesting that it was like, not only are they comforting, they're not comforting in, like, a sort of sentimental way, but they're comforting in, like, you literally needed to be comforted.
Yeah,
Like you literally needed something
yeah.
to
Like
be
it's like
there.
you're looking for like some sort of refuge for a little while, and they helped me like then, and it's sort of awesome for me that they like continue to provide that for me, and I don't watch them and think, oh God, we were locked in our houses, it was terrible. I watch them, I'm like, this is where I want to be.
It's also fantastic that I love that your reviews for these, when I go to you, you had like 4. Like, I was like, this just completely takes over my feed when I look up these movies. So
Yeah.
it's like you are these movies' biggest fan as well, which I love. I was like, she literally wrote about this 4 times,
Yeah.
like 4 different times.
I mean, that's
And
one
as
of,
a
like,
yeah.
it makes me so, I'm so stoked to get to talk to you about them because it's like I get to like make people listen to my feelings about them again, like in a different medium. Because yeah, I've
Yeah.
done it a lot, and I'm sure I probably will not stop anytime soon.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, are you a big rewatcher? Like, in
I'm
general?
typically not actually that much of
Okay,
a rewatcher, just because there's so much stuff to watch that like I
I
get like
agree.
I'm like, oh, I need to use this time for something else. But there's a
Yeah.
handful of things that I return to regularly.
Yeah, I am very, very much that way. Like, there are some people who just love to rewatch,
Yeah,
and they'll do it like Frank, he'll do it, like, 6 or 7 times, sometimes 10 times, and I'm like, "Alright, that's"
yeah,
you know, my watch list is, like, looming. I mean, it's just
yes.
gigantic and growing all the time.
Yeah. It's
So
very, I mean, I'm sure that like everyone who's listening to this has this exact or has a similar challenge when you're like, well, I want to watch something new at this time, but what if it's
mhm,
not good? What if I
I
waste those
know.
90 minutes? Like I know this movie is good, so I mean, maybe I should give this time to something I already know is worth that time and that I love, Like it's such a crapshoot to go and like try something new.
And sometimes when you watch something that you've already seen, you really are illuminated and you catch things that you that's the fun thing about this is like
Yeah.
whenever someone picks a movie that I've seen already, I'm actually really happy that I get to revisit it
Yeah.
and then see something new and then get it to be able to talk to them about it. We also have to mention Sakana that one of your comfort films was going to be what? Tell us.
Inherent Vice.
Inherent Vice. We decided against it, or should I say, you did
I
because I
did,
gave you
yeah.
the choice. But I thought that would be that would have been opening such a can of worms in an
I it
interesting way.
It's so funny because until you were like, "What?" Like, it didn't
Yes.
occur to me that that was, like, a weird comfort movie. Like, yeah, I watched it, like, 6 times in 2 months during the pandemic. What's weird about that?
What was amazing to me was that you were not you're not a PTA
No, not at all. Not at all.
person. Yeah, so that was what it was. It was that you actually love Inherent Vice,
Yeah.
not his filmography as a whole. So that's why I felt like it was where I was like, how interesting that
I
is.
think I was actually thinking about it because you and I talked about it a little bit, and I was trying to figure out why it was something that I found so comforting. And I
Yeah.
think that like it's a pretty common thread that runs through that and runs through at least two of the three that we're going to talk about is that, I find the central character really compelling. And in
Mm,
particular, the central character's relationships with the people around him. Like his relationship in Inherent Vice, his relationship with Bigfoot is like so beautiful. Like I find it so 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 affecting, and like how well they know each other and how important they are to each other, even though
mm.
Bigfoot is like this very unpleasant person to him outwardly. His Bigfoot is like in a terrible place, but like they have this connection, and they have this connection that they've had for a really really long time, and it just fascinates me. Like I love going there and spending time with like this group of people.
Yeah. And you said you loved the vibe, like
Yes.
the 70s atmospheric
Yeah, I
sort of
told you I read the
thing.
book. I'm
Yeah.
also not like a big Pynchon head at all. I've read like two Pynchon books, but I love the book, and I thought that the movie like captured that vibe just flawlessly.
Right. Yeah. We will come back to this point because what you just said about he and Bigfoot reminds me of your second film because that was
Yeah.
something that you resonated so much with,
Yes.
and I find that very interesting. I have never really it was one of your reviews, not all three of them, where you really got into it,
Mm.
and it really changed my perception of it, and just your emphasis is just very intriguing to me. But we'll get into that. Okay, so there's going to be three comfort films. The first one is Pit Stop, it from 1969, directed by Jack Hill.
Hmm.
Tell me how you sort of stumbled upon this one, and then what you find reaches you about it.
So, um, you and I've talked about this, but sort of I was a big movie watcher when I was young. I studied a lot of film in college. I wrote about movies for like work for several years, but I sort of
Mm,
got away from them. And one of the things during the pandemic that I went back to as a source of comfort, as something to occupy my time, was getting into movies again and watching like old movies and sort of exploring stuff that I hadn't seen before. And
right.
sort of in 2020, when we first got locked down, I was like, all right, I'm going to watch as many Rock Hudson movies as I can and as many Brian Dunleavy movies as I can. And so this I came to because it's Brian Dunleavy's final film.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, well, I got to watch it for him. And I had no idea, like, I didn't know anything about it. It's like, oh, it's a car movie. I'm not going to have any interest in car movies, But I watched it. I was looking at my logging. I think I watched it like three times in a week.
yeah.
Um, the
It's
first
not
time
very long, but
that
still.
yeah.
Still.
And it's just like I find it's funny because I mean it's about this sort of very very small, very minor racing world, car racing.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's figure eight racing, which is bananas, and it was a thing that actually existed. But it starts about this guy named Rick Bowman who sort of enters this world and is fascinated by it, and it's about his experience in that world and sort of how he changes and how the people around him change. And it's nothing to do with my life. I know nothing about cars. I am not in that environment in any way. But like to me, it's like when I think about that movie, it's a ridiculous thing to say, but like it feels like going home. Like when I feel like out of sorts, when I feel like I need like grounding or something, like I just turn that on, and as soon as the score starts, I'm like this is like this is a familiar place. This is a place that I'm comfortable. This is a place that like it's just like a hug for me, even though it's so depressing. Like everything in it is so grim, but it's
You're
just so
you
reassuring for me to visit it.
I was gonna say, these movies they're not happy. Well, your last one
The
is.
last one is, yeah.
Um, but it is interesting to me. It's not necessarily like you're sort of providing inadvertently your definition of comfort.
Yeah.
which is that it doesn't have to be necessarily a good ending, or like, it's just that it needs to feel soothing to you in some way, I think, or just
Yeah.
sort of nourishing.
And it's
And
very like, yeah, it's familiar. Like I know these people, and I find them all completely realistic. Um,
mhm.
and I find them individually compelling. I find their relationships compelling. And something I was thinking about, especially in the context of the second one, is that I think all of the characters in this movie like tell the truth all the time,
Yes.
which is unusual, I think.
Mhm.
And it's especially interesting when it's not the point at all. Like there's no focus on the fact that they're truth tellers, or we're not like applauding them for telling the truth. It's just that all of them are at the point in their lives when there's like no point in pretending to be anything they're not.
Right.
And perhaps I find that's one of the like the fact that they're it's so refreshing perhaps to find them being honest about themselves with each other. Um and I don't want to we can't like spoil the ending, but I find the ending is like a perfect encapsulation of that.
Yes. And the scene, where, like, you're right. Oh, I was kind of struck by this when he first meets, what is her name? Jolene?
Yeah.
When he first meets her, and they're just very, very direct. I always come back to Hal Hartley, but, and sort of Sorkin in a way. I love directness and
Mhm.
just, like, a transparency that cuts
Yeah.
to the core. Like, it cuts to the chase. There's no baloney. There's no and people just say what's on their mind. It is kind of a cleansing feeling, like, it is relaxing.
Yeah, and they're not, like, just pretend like, they're not good people,
Mhm.
for the
Right,
most part, and they're not pretending that they are, and I think
right.
part of it is that, like, most of them Jolene is not old, but most of them are, like, well past the age that you're supposed to be doing this, right? Like, the main character is played by Richard Davalos, who's, like, he's the good brother in East of Eden, right?
Mhm.
Like, and this is what, like, 15 years later or something? And he's still basically playing some like, he's in a position that someone at that age should be doing, you know? Like, he's
Right.
this, like, dirt track car racer, and he's, like, trying to make it, but he's, like, you know, 40 years old, 35 years old, whatever, 35, I think. Um,
Mm.
and it's like there's just no time to waste with like pretending to be a good guy or like trying to have good relationships. Like, no, I got stuff to do here, and I'm not, I'm worried about myself and I'm worried about my future, and that's going to be my focus.
Do you feel like it is sort of a picture of, like, Arrested Development in a way? Like, that these people are not growing up? Or do you see it as more like a resignation? Like, they recognize where they're at, and they're kind of accepting it? Or do you see it as, like, they're just wanting to not take on more?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't think resignation is the right word, because to me that suggests that like they are accepting that they're not going to go any further.
Right.
And I don't think that's at all the case with Rick, with the lead character at least. Um,
Mhm.
And I'm not even sure it's Arrested Development. Like, I don't think to us it is. Like looking at
Right.
him, looking at this guy who like all he does is drive cars and like bang girls and drink sometimes. Like to us, he's like it's immature and he should have grown up more. But to him, like this is who he is. You know, this is his life. This is sort of what he wants.
Right.
Um, and I think one of the things that about it that has come out more as I've seen it more is the character of Hawk, who's sort of his rival, who's like when we first see the track racing, he's like the guy everybody boos. You know, he's
Mhm.
like he's the villain, but he's like great. He's the best one, and he starts out with this really unpleasant relationship with Rick. He's played by Sid Haig, who's like in a bunch of Jack Hill movies, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating to me that like basically they switch. Like at first, Rick is sort of wide eyed and like, oh, this is interesting, and Hawk is the cynical, hard one. And then by the end of the movie, Hawk has actually grown as a person.
Right.
Like Hawk is like apologizes to him, and he like can see himself that he has done things that are not good, and he's sorry about it, and he's like looking at he like sees more of the world now, whereas Rick is become even more narrow in his focus and like sees nobody else at all besides people who might be useful to him.
Right. So there's something about that that is, because that runs into your second film a little bit too,
Yeah.
where there's just this, it's like an almost palpable loneliness, but it's not self-pity.
Yeah.
Um, maybe that's the difference, is that nobody is wallowing or like making excuses. They're still going out and they're still passionate, but you, or like we, the audience, can see, like, we wish for more for them.
Yeah.
And we wish that something would sort of come along and, I don't know, not take them away, but just deepen their happiness, maybe.
That's such a good point. The idea of like the lack of self pity, because I think that that's like crucial to Grant, who's the Brian Donlevy character, like the guy who sort of sponsors cars. That's
Oh,
crucial to him.
yes.
That's crucial to him and Rick for sure.
Right.
Like they don't think there's anything wrong with their lives. Like
Exactly.
their lives are difficult, but like this is what they're doing. This is what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I don't know
And
that I was going to say, I don't know that they see the limits. They must see the limits because they want more, but I don't think they see where they are as bad, as
right.
negative, as like shameful or below. Like, I think if they were telling people what they did, they'd be completely honest about it.
Right. There's no shame about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's what these have in common, because in your second film, the guy has there's a lot of self-loathing there, I think, but he also is kind of shameless. Like, well, this is me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like myself, but like, this is who I am. And there is a certain allure to characters who just aren't whiners or complainers.
Yeah.
And they
It,
could be.
and it's like, it's painful to watch someone like that who's so self aware of like all of their flaws. Whereas in Pit
Mhm.
Stop, like they're like, flaws? What flaws? Like, I mean, or if I have flaws, like who cares? Because they help me do what
Right.
I do.
Right. So how do you see Pit Stop as a film? As far as, if we're talking technically, like, the cinematography, the direction, does anything stand out to you in terms of the look?
I should have looked this up before. I think it looks incredible.
Mhm.
The cinematographer, people are going to be screaming at me. There's a director of like sort of schlocky horror stuff who made like 2 or 3 movies. Um,
Mhm.
one of them is about a kidnapping. One of them I think is called like X or something. People will know. People who have seen it know what I'm talking about.
People will know.
Yeah.
We're
But
relying on
but
you.
when I watched, this is ridiculous because there's no like crucial nouns in this story. But when I watched one of those movies, I was like, damn, this looks amazing. How is this low budget movie look so good? And I looked it up. I was like, oh, that person was the cinematographer for Pit Stop. So of course it looked good.
Of course it does to you. Yes.
Yes. I mean, I think
Yes.
I love the black and white.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, I mean, one of my reviews, I just posted like a billion screen caps. Like it makes me emotional to just think about how the movie looks. Like there's a scene when Rick is putting his car together, and we like see him in like just like this, like a junkyard full of cars, and he's like against the sky, and it is so beautiful. It's just like
Mhm.
it's this, it's poor and it's basic and it's sort of run down, and yet the movie makes it look like they see it. I think,
Right.
it makes the world just this stunningly beautiful place to be in somehow.
Right. And it's not like it's not romanticizing reality.
No, not at
Like,
all.
you called it, the phrase I loved that you used was the beauty of the underneath.
Yeah.
So it's not trying to sort of put like a sheen on something or dress it up, and it might be that lack of artifice that you just
Yeah.
really respond to.
And the scene, and like there's a scene where they go to the desert that is completely unlike everything else.
Mhm.
But, watching dune buggies in the desert, like the way the desert is shot, I mean, probably it's hard to screw up shooting something like that. But
Mm.
it's makes such a wonderful contrast to what we've seen before, because so much of what we've seen before is sort of heavy on the darkness and heavy on like sort of the urban edges, whereas this is very like the sand is so bright and um it's so like viscerally separate from where most of the movie has taken place. And I think that that is obviously intentional, and I think it's really, really striking. I mean, Jack Hill wrote it also, and I just think that like there's a scene that you will remember. If anyone has seen it, maybe they remember. There's a weird scene at Grant Willard's shop where he like has his
Mhm.
arm around a random guy, like around his waist, and he's like pointing at a thing and like describing something. And it's I have no idea what it is for. It's like so that the phone can ring and he can talk to someone on the phone. Like for me, that is the one like flaw in the movie. That should not be there. I have no idea why that's there. But if you took out that weird moment, it's like for me, like it's flawless. I just think it's so wonderful.
Yeah. I love your mind. The things that that stick out to you and the things that you notice. You would have been a great editor, Sakana, I think.
That's
You
probably I would have been a great editor to make movies about very specific things that like I
but
think are
still,
important.
yes, but you have the eye for it. Okay, let's say that. You have like the way of looking at where you're like that's not exactly right, you know. And that's a skill for sure. So,
It probably
yeah.
will take, thank you for saying that. It probably takes me watching a movie like at least 5 or 6 times before I can be like, oh, maybe that shouldn't be
Oh,
there, which isn't very
yeah.
efficient, but at least I did notice.
You do get there.
Yeah.
So, yes, Pit Stop 1969 Jack Hill, check it out. Her Sakana's second film is also directed coincidentally by a person named Jack Smite. This one is 1966 Harper, which actually I think I remember because you were in the process of choosing what you wanted your films to be, and I
Mm,
remember seeing you log this, and then you very shortly said, "Okay, yeah."
yeah.
So this is one that you saw again before you even said, "Yeah, this is the one I want to do second."
Yeah, I rewatched like I had just watched Inherent Vice fairly recently, so I rewatched this and another one I was considering, and I was like, oh, okay,
Right.
it's got to be Harper.
What do you love about Harper? Because this one I feel like you are very unique in. People like it, but you have like a what do I want to say for this? It's like an affection, but also like a kinship, I feel,
Yeah,
that, with it.
I think that that's a good word, which is weird because like it's horrible
It's about
things.
dudes,
um,
private investigators.
I have no idea. I don't remember why I first watched this. It's based on a book by Ross McDonald, and I've
Mhm.
read I think all of Ross McDonald's books, but not for a long time, so I don't remember it specifically. But I might have been drawn to it because of that. Um,
Mm.
and the first time I saw it, I was listening recently to your episode with Tristan about the comfort movies, and I think he said that one of the ones on his list he hated the first time he saw it,
Yes.
and that was how I felt about this. I saw
Mm.
it and I think I gave it 2 stars the first time I watched it. And I was like, dude, this guy sucks. Like, why would I spend
Yeah.
time with this awful person? He's so selfish. He's so immature. And then I don't know why, but I watched it again shortly after that. And I was like, oh, he's so selfish and immature. But like, he knows that. And like, the whole point is that he's awful. And like,
Right.
we are experiencing basically, we're watching him navigate the world.
Mm.
And I find, I just find the character just unbelievably fascinating. He's played
Mm.
by Paul Newman. I'm actually not the biggest, like, I'm not like a big Paul Newmanaholic, but I do like Paul Newman's flawed characters. Like, I love this. I love Slapshot. And one of the reasons I like The Sting so much, as opposed
Yeah.
to Butch and Sundance, which I'm like very unpopular opinion on not liking that, um,
Mm.
because like his character in The Sting is very, very flawed. And like he knows that he's flawed. And I think Newman is
Henry
so,
Gondorf.
yes, Newman is so good at
He is, yeah.
bringing those characters to life and like making us care about them, and also showing this sort of bone deep sort of disgust with himself. Um, I don't think the character in Slapshot I actually think the character in Slapshot is surprisingly optimistic, but he is similarly flawed and like aware of his flaws.
Yeah, they there was like a review I read about Harper after I saw it, and I read yours, where somebody was saying that William Goldman, who wrote the screenplay and wrote Butch Cassidy, um, among many other things that are wonderful, All the President's Men, Princess Bride,
Mm,
um, uh, was that the thing that you need, everything you need to know about Harper is like in the first frame, where it's like he is trying to make coffee and he takes old coffee out of the trash and then tries to reuse it.
mhm.
And it's kind of like the long goodbye in a way where it's like the way the guy takes care of his cat says so much about
Yeah,
him as character,
yeah,
about Altman's Marlowe.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, I think it's very interesting, these sort of like visual cues, because the first time you meet Henry in The Sting,
Yes, yes,
he's
exactly.
he's like drunk and on the floor,
Yeah.
and he's like the great Henry Gondorf, like, oh my gosh. I love The Sting, sorry. But yes, uh, so you're right on. Paul Newman enjoyed playing these types of guys, even though he was trying to get away from his pretty boyness,
Mm,
like
which,
Elizabeth Taylor doing Who's Afraid,
yeah, 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 exactly. And like to with great success, I think. I mean, like I would argue in both.
Mm.
And also,
Oh, yeah,
like,
for
I
sure.
mean, not only is he like using old coffee because he's out of coffee, like he's hungover, just like Gondorf.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
he's living in his office. Like he doesn't even have a home. He has this like shitty little office, and that's where he lives also. And he like he has like he's a PI, but like he does crummy PI jobs. He's like Mike Hammer. Like he does like he's like a bedroom dick, you know. He does like crappy jobs for hardly any pay, and this is his life. You know, what we see at the beginning of the movie is like what every morning is like for
It's also his character in The Verdict. We should make a list of
him.
this.
I have not seen The Verdict, but I will watch it now.
Okay, please see The Verdict. That way it's the same thing over and over again.
It's
It's
on my
like,
list.
how can we get redemption for Paul Newman? I mean, like, the man is constantly and that's another one where he lives in his office.
Yes, God. I mean,
And
it's efficient, I guess, but man,
but man, yeah. And then there's that H thing, right? Where he wanted to it was his
yes,
name is like Archer in the book, right?
yes.
And then he wanted it to be Harper because
So he could be
he's got
another
this,
H. Yeah,
yeah, ombre, HUD, hustler.
another terrible H.
I know. And then Harper. Is Harper your favorite Paul Newman film?
Oh, for
Like, is that
sure.
the
I
one
mean,
that's
well,
okay,
this honestly, like
besides the Sting?
this, Slapshot, and The Sting are movies that like I think I give 5 stars to all of them.
Okay.
But I think it just depends on my mood. I feel like more emotional about this one and Slapshot. Like I have a lot of feelings about Slapshot also. Whereas The Sting is just like, ah, I'm gonna go there and enjoy the music and just like love the
Oh, it's so
periodness of
good.
it. Oh, it's wonderful.
So when you first saw Harper, you didn't like it. Okay. Then you came back around and then tell me about, you have to talk about your fascination, obsession, Sakana, with
Oh my god.
Albert and Harper's relationship. I think a relationship is the apt term too.
I have like extensive headcanon about Albert and Harper. Like it's really out of control. But
It is. It is.
um
Gotta rein
Albert
it in.
is, for people who haven't seen it, he's basically a friend of Harper's. He used like
Mhm.
Harper was a cop. Albert used to be in the DA's office. This is not headcanon. This is a real thing. And now Albert's a lawyer, and Albert is Harper's connection to the job that the movie is about, trying to find Lauren Bacall's husband. And I like it's like I can't even express how much I love him. Harper is with everybody. He's sort of hard and sarcastic and often like intentionally unpleasant. Like he is consciously almost always pushing people away,
Mhm.
except for Beauty, and also except for Albert. And with Albert, like he's just a completely different person. Like the more you watch it, the more you see that he's even like physically different with Albert. Like
Mhm.
when he's in Albert's office and he like sits in his chair, but he's like completely physically relaxed so much that he's like literally sliding out of the chair.
Slumping.
And
Mhm.
he takes over Albert's desk at one point, and he's sort of like lying on the desk. And then later at the house, at the Sampson house, it's the same thing. Like when, what's her name? Who's the girl?
You're talking about
Miranda.
the
When
girl who tries
Miranda
to
comes
seduce.
in,
Yeah.
and he's like freaking out because Miranda's there and he has a crush on her and it's like a pretty girl.
Yeah.
And she leaves and Harper's going to drive with her somewhere. And Albert is like, what? You're going? And Harper's like lying in a chair. Like he's not sitting like a normal human. Like for some reason, when he's around Albert, like everything about him changes.
He's like a cat almost. It's like he's his pet.
Yes, it's so wild. And like in the again, I don't want to like spoil the ending,
Mhm.
but there's a he has these conversations with Albert that I think are really revealing about who he is. Like there's a point towards the end when he's like, just don't lie to me, Albert. Lying is for other people. And
Yes.
like for a guy who just doesn't care about anyone, for him to like say something that honest to someone like shows great trust, but also like that he cares about him so much. Like he can't handle having Albert be just like everybody else, I think.
Right.
And there's also a point like right around that conversation about around Miranda, he says something like, the bottom is loaded with nice people, only bastards rise.
Yes.
And this in the context of Albert being like, yeah, I'm nice, and Miranda doesn't notice me because I'm nice.
Right.
But it's like Harper, I don't know if he's trying to give himself a reason for the way he is, like I'm a bastard and therefore maybe I'll rise someday. Or if it's just like this pithy thing that people always say that like he knows isn't true.
Mm.
Like it's him sort of angrily mouthing these sort of sayings that people sort of toss off. But when you think about it and when you know them as Albert, I feel like Albert like knows everything about him. Um, when you know them, you know that like there's so much more going on there because it's like he wishes that bastards rose, or he wishes that he was a bastard who rose, or something.
Right. But he's not as bad as maybe he thinks.
I don't I,
Or he or he's not as bad as somebody who's really successful at that. There's
yeah,
still maybe some sense of decency or some desire for truth that is holding him back from being truly just
yeah.
apathetic maybe, or just like given up.
It's he definitely has not given up. It's like it seems like he wishes that he
Right.
had given up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants to, but there's still something that's driving him and compelling him to want to solve the mystery.
Which he talks about a little at the end when he's telling Albert that like there were like 3 or 4 in the last year, there were like 3 or 4 really good months. And basically he keeps really good months as in like he did work that he cared about. And
Right.
he basically says that he keeps going, waiting for those months, waiting for those jobs. And
Mhm.
in the sort of the last scene, the conclusion of the movie, it's like we sort of see what he cares about. We see what he's committed to. And what he cares about
Right.
is not truth and justice. What he cares about is Albert. Like what he cares
I
about is his
know.
friend.
Right.
And like so it's showing his goodness, but it's also showing like he's willing to sacrifice the thing that he works for, you know, in the face of something that like he cares about as opposed to that he's like gets paid to do.
Now, so kinda I have to ask you this. Do you think it's a little bit more, if we wanna say more than friends here? I mean, is
Okay.
there to be a little high school about it, uh, you know, are they just friends? Or, like, because there is that undertone I felt of, like, why doesn't he flirt with all the hot women who are after him? Why does he not seem interested? And then, like, even the scenes with Janet Leigh, his ex-wife, it's kinda like,
Yeah,
there's
like
no fire there.
okay. You know that I'm like not hesitant to read characters as gay and like
Mhm.
have relationships with people that I like. And I 100% read Harper as a gay character, as like a closeted gay man.
That's what yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
in my headcanon, Albert's like one of the few people who knows that he's gay and like doesn't care. And
Mm,
I feel like they're not a couple, or they're not physically a couple. I do think emotionally they have this like really intense connection. But I
mhm.
think I don't know, like I mean, Harper is basically like constantly flirting with Beauty, with Robert Wagner. Like
Yeah,
all the time.
right.
And I don't know, in my head, like that's him like trying to find sort of like this like dream good thing for himself.
Mm,
Um and with I don't know, I for me the thing with Albert is like all emotional. That doesn't mean that it'll always stay that way, but for me that's where it is. Did
okay.
you thought that there was more going on, or had been at
Yeah,
least?
well, and it reminded me of Cat in a Hot Tin Roof too.
Mm,
Just, the way that he would talk about what was it? Didn't he have
his real yeah,
somebody
yeah,
I
yeah. Wasn't his name
yeah.
like Skipper or something?
Yeah, it was something really
Yeah,
stupid.
yeah.
Well, and his name was, Brick, right? Brick
Yes.
Pollitt. So, that's just Tennessee Williams, which I'm not even gonna get into, or I'll be here all day. But yeah, that reminded me, Paul Newman often does that sort of vibe
Mm,
where, like, I don't know if it's because he just never has on-screen chemistry with a female, because I feel like this way about even The Hustler too, where he's supposedly very in love, but
mm.
I feel like he always has better chemistry with Redford, or he just I don't know what it is. But there's something about him that always seems that way anyway to me. So, but Harper really plays it up.
It's something that this is a tangent that we don't have to go on for very long, but it's something that I only thought of this because someone commented on an old review of mine that reminded me that's like James Cagney has
Mhm.
this intense connection with other men on screen. And for me, a
Mhm.
lot of it is because he's so attentive to them. And
Like present.
yeah, and I don't think all actors are like that with other men. And
Mm.
I wonder if that's one of the reasons that Newman has such on-screen connections with that Newman's characters have such on-screen connections with other male characters, is because he has that same like presentness and that same like intensity of attention, which
Yes.
we often associate only with sort of heterosexual interactions.
Right. Cuz James Spader has that too.
Mm,
I love that about him. He is like intensely present, and it doesn't matter who the person
yeah.
is. He's like fully there and fully listening and just yeah. So you're right. I think maybe that's what it is, but it also is just sort of an ease
Yeah.
about it, like that there's just no discrimination or just no discomfort at all.
And I think that like in Harper, it's intensified by the screenplay. Like you're
Mm.
exactly right. Like Miranda is crying so hard to come on to him, and
Yes,
he
and he's
basically
just like
makes fun. He
whatever.
basically mocks her. He's like, "Oh,
And
you
she's
want to
so
get with
hot.
me? Yeah, yeah, yeah." Like, and he
Yeah.
like, yeah. And with his wife, something that
Mhm.
only noticed this time is when he goes to her and he's like, "I need help. I need comfort," and they have their sort of last hurrah. Like that's one of the few times. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only with women. Like that's actively cruel.
I know.
Everything about that is like intentionally like mean with forethought. Like it is awful. And
But she knows it. I mean, she's somewhat aware that she's like, he's like this. He's a jerk.
yeah, it's like she
But
knows who he
yeah.
is and he knows that she'll give in, and he does it to her again. And it like
Mhm.
it almost turns your stomach. Like I love this character and I love how flawed he is. But for me that's like by far his worst moment, because that's somebody
Mhm.
that he cares about, and like he's in a really dark place, and it's like something that I've written about I think several times, but like he wants everyone else to think that he's as awful as he knows he is.
Right.
And especially women. And I feel like that's a situation in which he's really low and he's had a really rough like unbelievably out of control night with like work and physical pain and awful stuff, and it's like he goes there and he like doubles down on making that impression on this woman that he's still married to. And it's just,
Right.
it's like, for me, that scene is like, oh, like, he's not a good person. He's a person who has good
Right.
moments, but like, that's not a good person. That's a complicated, really, really flawed guy who cares about a few people, and with them he can be good.
Right. But he himself at his core is
It
not.
doesn't, I don't know, that scene like really got me this time. Like how mean it is and how like thought thoughtfully mean it is. You know, he
Mm.
knows exactly what buttons to push. He goes there, he keeps pushing and he keeps pushing because he knows where it's going to end up, and he knows he's going to leave in the morning, and he knows she's going to be like all happy that he's there. It's just awful.
Yeah, I think that it almost makes the ending more, I don't know. It's like it's more cathartic
Mm.
because you feel like he deserves it.
Ah,
Like whatever happens, it's like, yeah, dude. I mean, you're kind of lost.
yeah.
And that was the feeling I got from Pit Stop too,
Yeah.
just the lostness, the aimlessness, but still searching though, still wanting, but they are still sort of meandering. And actually, that's a great transition to your last one. Your last one is Irony of Fate or Enjoy Your Bath from 1975. I'm not going to butcher the Russian name. I'll let you say it, Sakana.
Eldar Razanov, I think, is close.
Rozanov is
Razanov.
how I want to say. Uh, yeah, because these people are actually lost. I
Yes.
mean, they literally. The, I was like, speaking of lostness, they literally get lost. So this one is a completely different vibe from the first two. Really, really fun, sort of a rom com. That is a Soviet film, right? Which is something that you love.
Yes.
Like, yes. But tell me, how you stumbled upon this, and then how would you describe this movie to someone who's never seen it?
I know I've been like, I have so much to say about these movies, but like, I'm so interested in hearing your thoughts on this one since it's something that you weren't
Okay.
familiar with at all. Um,
Yeah.
I found it because I did sometime in 2022, I guess, maybe at the beginning of the, wait, I don't know when I did it, but I did a project of watching films from Eastern Bloc nations, sort of during the
Mhm.
Soviet era. And this is
Mhm.
one of them. And the director made a bunch of sort of very beloved romances, usually. And this one is was originally on there. Actually, a bunch of my favorite Soviet films originated on TV. It's like two-part television films.
Right.
Um,
Right. And it feels kind of TV or like stagey,
yeah,
sort of.
and
Yeah.
it was massively, massively popular. And it was like cut and released in the theater because so many people wanted to see it because they hadn't seen it on TV. And it's now in Russia and in many of the former Soviet republics. It's like a tradition to watch it on New Year's Eve.
Right,
And
of course. I felt like
yeah,
I wish I had watched it. Yeah,
and
on New Year's
so
Eve.
like just knowing all that stuff about it, I was like, okay, well, this is on my list. I have to try it. And as you said, it's really different from all this other stuff. And it's not like
Mhm.
I mentioned this in a review recently. Not often. There a lot of romances like really don't work for me. And
Mm.
part of that is maybe because I'm aro ace, like I don't connect with especially with like the sort of romantic element. As an
Mhm.
aromantic person, I'm like, that doesn't, I have no idea. Like, I can't identify with those desires.
Okay.
Um, but for me, like the romance in this, like it's totally works. And I think the reason that it works so well for me is because of like how like they fall in love very quickly, which is usually annoying,
Mhm.
but they have to work so hard to get there. And we see it's just beautifully written and beautifully acted, I think. We see so much of their relationship and so much of them as people and the way they change and how they look at and sort of and like literally look at how they look at one another, how they approach one another, what they reveal about themselves, what they won't reveal, like when they draw back, when they're feeling more emotional. That like for me, the fact that they fall in love is completely convincing because of like all of the like labor that they've had to put in to sort of find a way to be together, to find a way to be comfortable with like admitting that they love one another.
And this is a really, so basically it's kind of like a comedy of errors where and there's all these shenanigans and hijinks. And at the beginning, it kind of reminded me of like the Before trilogy. Like it reminded me of like Before Sunrise and how they met. Just like the randomness and sort of the meet cute part of it.
And the meet cute is
Uh,
that it gets drunk and gets put on a plane by his friends, and he goes to his address. Except is he, are they in Leningrad, Stalingrad? Where are they?
yeah, it's Leningrad. It's Leningrad, and
So
he
he
wanted
lives
to
in
go to
Moscow,
Moscow.
but he's in Leningrad. He
Mhm.
doesn't know he's in Leningrad, so he just goes to his house because all of these Soviet cities are the same, and like the addresses are the same, and the buildings are the same. So he just goes to his house, goes to his apartment building, goes to his apartment, and he falls in bed, and there's a woman is like, "What are you doing in my apartment?"
It's almost like a it reminds me a little bit of Billy Wilder too, like that kind of setup or like a screwball
Because yeah,
comedy.
it's so silly.
It's so silly, and a lot of when they meet, it's just confusion. It's just pure utter chaos and confusion. Like, what are you doing here? And he's still hungover
Yes,
and like not there, and he doesn't know who she is or what she's talking about. And like, why did you change my apartment? Where'd you put my stuff? Where's my mom? And so there's this whole thing of like just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And then, you're right, they go through so many stages of, uh, liking each other to not, to maybe, okay, I kind of do, and then it dips, and then there's all these circumstances, so it's heavily, like, situational,
and
I would say, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Like, heavily reactive.
yeah, and also like yeah, there's ridiculous things happening all the time.
Yes.
But in spite of that, everything that they go through, all of the shifts in their relationship, none of them to me seem like they happen because someone wrote them down. To me, all of them are entirely convincing in the
Mm,
moment. And
right.
I just think like it's so it's just it's like note perfect in every way for me. Both the performances and the writing of those characters and how they feel about one another. I just think it when I was rewatching part of it last night, and it was just like, when one is in the background and there's other people there and like the way they look at each other, the way they see each other, like you can see in the performances what emotions they're feeling in that second. And all of it just, to me, it's so logical, even though it's ridiculous, which I think
Mhm.
is like a very unusual thing to see. It's an unusual way for a movie to succeed, at least with me.
Right, like, it makes sense within itself, even though it's absurd,
Yeah,
and it's very unlikely that it would occur.
yeah,
But within its own framework, it makes perfect sense,
absolutely. Yeah, well said.
a and just has a logic to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even the side characters, you were telling me when I was watching it last night, you were like, "Oh, I love her boyfriend."
Oh my god.
Um, I was like, "Sakana is such a fan of supportings." You remind me of Jeddah in that way, that you guys just love, like, supporting characters and actors. But that's another thing that I think you just dig about it. It's just, like, everyone involved, not just the main romance.
That the guy who is her like sort of buffoonish sort of boyfriend slash almost fiance of the female lead
Mhm,
is played by Yuri
mhm,
Yakovlev, who's one of my two favorite Soviet actors. And
mhm,
I genuinely think he's a genius. Like he can do anything. He's been in like ridiculous over the top comedies. He
mhm.
played the lead character in this awesome Soviet adaptation of The Idiot. Like that was really early in his career. Like he was in Anna Karenina. He plays Anna's brother in Anna Karenina. Like he can do literally anything and do it incredibly well. And I think here again, the screenplay is part of the success of it. But I genuinely think it's beautiful. Like he is awful. He is he's very socially awkward. He's older than she is. He is he's uncomfortable all the time. he's freaking out about the fact that there's this man in her apartment, not unreasonably. He's like, "You know his name? What is going on? Why is he
Right.
here?"
Right.
And
Why is he here?
he
And then, like, why is he still
and he
here?
keeps leaving and coming back, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But in the end, like, he's granted this degree of humanity, which I don't think that kind of character is guaranteed.
Would normally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like
Mhm.
his last scene, he's hammered. Like he doesn't drink. He's hammered. He's taking a shower in all of his clothes. They're like, please don't do that. You're going to freeze to death when you go outside. Like, this is a terrible idea. But in that scene, he says things that are true and that the movie acknowledges, the characters in the movie acknowledge are true.
Right.
And I find that very touching, and I love that when he leaves for the last time, her mom comes in and she was like, "Why would you hurt such a good man?" I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
like
Oh,
yes, in spite of all of his buffoonery, in spite of the fact that the movie is making fun of him, in spite of the fact that the male lead like hates him and is constantly mocking him as like speaking of not good people, like he's not like a necessarily a good person. He's really nasty
no,
about it, believe.
no, Sakana, this is your through line.
Perhaps. But in spite of all
I'm glad you're
that,
realizing these things yourself.
the
That's
last
that's
line on him is that like just very frank and very plain, he was a good man and you hurt him.
Mhm.
And like movies don't usually do that for that kind of character. I don't think.
And I think it's kind of reflective of the female lead in a
Yeah.
way, because it's like he's better off.
Yes.
Like if she would be if she wants the jerk or the guy that's kind of not great,
Yeah.
then
That's
okay,
true.
here you go. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like we kind of want him to have better
I like
in a
that.
way.
Yes. I will continue to think that he goes out and doesn't freeze to death and
And
finds a nice girl.
finds a nice girl
Yes.
who is not so wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Um because there was a line like that where she was on the phone with the main character's
Fiance.
person, and yeah, and she was like, it was a really good line about that, someday he'll leave you at the last moment too.
Yes.
So it's also like, if you're going to start something in this fashion,
Yeah.
it could happen to you. Like, don't think that you are like above.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. The script is really, really smart. It oddly enough reminded me of the Decalogue. I don't know if you've seen that. Okay. That's another thing where there's just a lot of random things that happen, and the series is basically how people react
Mm.
to different situations. Those are like
Yeah.
morally compromising ones, whereas this one is just sort of like how it makes you think about how you would react, but it's not necessarily that like something is life or death stakes.
Yeah.
But I did like how Irony of Fate has this very clear, like almost like the stages of grief, except the stages of young
Yeah.
love, let's say.
That's a really good way of looking
And
at it. Was
yeah.
it something, since I sort of know what you thought about the other two just from reading your like capsule reviews, what was the
Hmm.
experience of this one like for you since it's so different?
I really, really enjoyed it. I liked how long it was because I felt like it was able to build kind of like happy hour and drive my car.
Mm.
That sort of like you need this block of time to really become familiar, have their cadence and the way they speak and everything be very realistic. I told you also I really like the
Yeah.
singing. There are these random scenes where they just start singing, um, which you said was, emblematic of those films, right? Like, people would just start.
It's not in my like I'm not an expert at all, but in my experience, it's pretty common in I would almost say East. That's probably not fair. There are a lot of Soviet films in which there is a scene in which there's a party or there's a group of people and someone picks up a guitar and sings and like you listen to the whole song.
Yep.
And here I think we talked about this a little before, but it's very intimate, it's very personal. I think
Mhm.
they both ask her to sing, don't they?
Yes.
And her singing style is very tentative, sort of, and she sings a very emotional song. And then when he sings, it's very he's very much like on stage, and
Yeah, like flirty,
yeah, it's like
or trying to be.
it's a much catchier song, and it's like very much like outwardly performative, and it's
Right.
very there. It's illustrative of who they are as characters, and
Mhm.
I think it helps advance the story. It's not like the story stops while they sing. It like helps us get to know them better, and the way they react to one another, I think, is also advances the story.
So what would you say is comforting about it for you? What do you find comforting in Irony of Fate?
I like there's a certain feel for me that these Soviet TV films have, and
Mhm.
I love like a handful of them. I really really love. This is maybe the only one that isn't fundamentally depressing, at least for me.
Yes.
um, so I like just sort of being able to go there and see this relationship develop, and I like that
Mhm.
it gives us a very sweet happy ending, but it's a very sweet happy ending that is disarmed by what you described about, like, is this really going to last? And
Right.
also by the fact that his friends are there, and his friends are like think that he's his fiance, that she is his old fiance, and they're like, "Do you have any idea what's going on?" It's the happy ending is very sweet and like earned, but also it's undermined. The movie undermines it as it's
It's
sort of
like a madcap.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so great. And also like I just love watching Yuri Yakovlev. I love watching him as that character. I love how like he's just miserable and he's so uncomfortable, and I just
Sakana.
love watching him play that role. I could just watch it. I could watch like a supercut of just Ippolit. It would make me so happy.
You're it is so funny. It's like it's almost disturbing. If I didn't know you at all, I'd be like, "Listen, maybe you should look into this." But you really do enjoy the sort of people going through the ringer
You know,
and like
like going through the ringer and like them being I don't know, like going through the ringer, but there being like some sort of emotional like realness to it or like a core to it. I don't know. Like there's something to
Uh-huh.
hold on to that's not just like suffering, but there's like there's like a person in there who like is better than all of this, and he's better than all of these people. Like
Mm.
there's a good man inside of that, and I like that the movie finds that, but I also think the performance is just brilliant in like how slowly he reveals that, and the way that he sort of he embodies the character so beautifully, I think.
So maybe this is sort of it reminds me of like metamorphosis or like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Like you enjoy
But
someone.
it's like a butterfly, but like a busted ass butterfly, you know? Like
Right. But, like, coming into your own, though,
yeah.
you enjoy watching the process of someone sort of evolving and then transcending their initial state, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think fundamentally what I like, it's almost always male characters, are
Mhm. Yeah.
people who like know that they're intensely flawed, but are trying either to get better or trying not to screw stuff up more. Like
Right.
I find that very, very compelling. Like the self-awareness, but also the like wrestling with yourself and wrestling with your place in the world and trying to figure out how to get through it in a way that is minimally destructive.
Right, which is not exactly the same as, like, people who are, like, intentionally self-improving, but perhaps it's just this, you have such a fascination and draw to realism. So maybe it's because the other stuff just seems phony to you. If it's too
It
much,
could be.
like, but if it's like if they can just improve a little bit, if they can just be a little bit better,
Yeah.
um, then that's something you identify
And
with.
that doesn't mean I don't like those other things, but they're
Mm,
not gonna be things that I return to and things that I find, oddly comforting.
exactly. Yes. Mm,
And I do like, for
food for
me,
thought.
I think I only saw this for the first time last year, but I
Mhm.
immediately was like, "Okay, I'm watching this every New Year's Eve now." And so it's like it's a my friend Emily and I, for a long time, like in high school and then in college when we were home, we would watch Guys and Dolls every New Year's Eve. So this is my New Year's Eve
Your
movie, and it's
your
like
new
I
your
like I
new New
like getting
Year's
to
Eve.
go know that this is where I'm going to be hanging out on New Year's. Like it's comforting.
Yeah, and it's a good way to usher in the new year because it ends well.
Yes, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a struggle, but there's this little bit of happiness at least for a while at the end.
Okay, we're gonna end there. I'm gonna give you guys the titles again. Please watch them all for Sakana. They are Pit Stop, Harper, An Irony of Fate, comma, or Enjoy Your Bath, which you will understand the second part when you see it. This was a delight and an honor to have you, Sakana. I hope that you had a good time. And I really enjoyed watching these movies. Thank you for being on for my 1 year. And what a very fitting movie, because these also they do speak to me in a sort of like very honest and transparent way, which is what I'm always after, just in general.
Well, thank you
So
so much for watching these and for like letting me talk to you about these things that I love for such a long time. I'm delighted that I got to be on. Thank you for doing this. I mean, you and I have talked about it, but I love that you're sort of the way you are consciously creating a community about movies and about loving movies. I think it's something from which we all get to benefit. So thank you for doing that.
on that note, we'll see you at the movies.